Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are back with Level 1 program. We are now talking about drum beats. I'm Ben Hodges from BH Drum Academy, your teacher here again. I'm very, very excited to be talking about drum beats. We've been working towards building a drum beat. We've been working with rhythms. We've been working with rudiments. We've been even talking a little bit about the kick drum and the kick pedal and the hi-hat and how they work together. So we have all of these pieces now that we're going to merge together, and we're finally going to make some drum beats. So I'm very excited to be teaching this for you. Now, drum beats and grooves. You might hear these words, what a groove is or a drum beat. They mean exactly the same thing. And a drum beat and a groove is the foundation of all music. When you listen to your favorite songs, those are the things that people dance to. Those are the things that people tap along to. It gives people rhythm. That's a drummer's job. We are part of the rhythm section. So it is extremely important that we are as solid as possible when we are working with our drum beats and our grooves. And I know there's a lot of combinations of different grooves and drum beats that we can make. And we're going to talk about how we can make them and how we can change them up a little bit differently. But the drum beats really make a big difference with how the song feels as well, and the tempo of the song. Keep in mind that if we are a little sloppy with our drum beats and our grooves, the band that we're going to be playing with will have a hard time following you. And so it's going to make the song quite noticeably different or off or feel wrong. So we want to make sure that we execute a solid foundation as we play our drums. It's super admirable and mighty admirable to be solid on the drums. It's okay to once in a while add a little bit of flash as we play the drums. I know some famous drummers like a Travis Barker, for example, is really all about flash, how they swing their arms around and how they have these little flutters on the hats and also these really good drum fills. Those are ways that we can add a bit of flash to it. But in hindsight, we always will have a foundational groove that matches every song, and it makes the feel of the song. So it's really important that we stay solid and execute the groove first. And if we can able to do that easily, then we can think about adding a little bit of flash along the way. So that's our goal, is we're trying to stay as solid as possible when we are playing the drums and a specific drum beat. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to play a drum beat and how we can make a typical drum beat different, and to make it sound different and have different feels. We're going to get a chance to talk about all of those things. Now, as a new beginner, there's going to be some times where you might get a little confused, or your brain might not be able to process the new information, and you're going to find it a little difficult to kind of work on to use your coordination, because really we are working three or four things at the exact same time. It's kind of like that mentality of tapping your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. Some people can do that. Some people struggle to do that. And so with drums, we're working a lot of things at the same time. So as a rule of thumb, if you ever get stuck doing any of these exercises, break it down a little bit and follow these easy steps in order to figure something out. Always start from the top down. So the top being the hi-hat, the middle is being the snare, and way down below is the bass drum. Okay, so on all of our sheet music on our exercises, as we read them, you're going to see some hi-hat notes, some snare drum notes, and some bass drum notes. And as you see in the picture, this is what they look like. The hi-hat is marked with an X, and actually all symbols in sheet music for drums is marked with an X. So it's always right at the very, very top. The snare drum is right in the middle, just the line right above the middle line. And the bass drum is always near the bottom. So that's how we're going to read things. So when I'm looking at a typical beat, I'm going to try and figure out the hi-hat first, then the snare drum second, and the bass drum third. And we're going to be kind of adding it all together. So for example, when I'm playing a drum beat and trying to figure it out, I will figure out the hi-hat, and then I will do the hi-hat and snare together. And then once I've mastered the hi-hat and snare together, then I will add the bass drum on top of what I've done already before. Okay, so that's what it's going to be like. Now, today we are going to be working on a basic rock beat, it's called. The exercise we're doing is in 4/4 time. 4/4 meaning, if you remember from our rhythm and counting lesson, 4/4 time meaning that there are 4 beats in every single bar. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this basic beat and we're going to change some things about it. So we might change what we do with the hi-hat, and you're going to notice and listen to, and as you play it, you're going to notice that the drum beat has a very different feel, and it gives a lot more range of possibilities. And then we're going to maybe change some things that we do on the snare drum. And then you're going to notice it's going to have some different feel. And then we're going to change some things on the kick drum, and you're going to notice it's going to have some different feel. So I call this some different variations of playing a basic beat. We just change kind of how many different types of notes we play on certain things, and the whole drum beat changes. So we can also change the speed, of course, how fast we're playing or how slow we're playing. That will, of course, change how it feels. But changing what notes we play also makes a big difference on that. So I just want you to be aware of that. Now for today, you'll notice that I'm missing a lot of my drum kit here. And I did that on purpose because I don't want the other pieces to distract you from playing. Now when I'm working on beats, this is actually a common setup that I use personally to work on some basic grooves and also to allow me to get creative with grooves. So I've eliminated all my different options of toms and cymbals because I'm just going to stick to the hi-hat, snare, and the bass drum just for learning the different grooves with you today. All right, so that's kind of why. Now, you don't have to take away some of your drums for your setup today. You can keep them as you wish, but I'm just letting you know that's kind of why some of my drums are missing today. All right, so let's get started. Now, if you haven't printed off your worksheet yet, get on that and absolutely do it. We have a bunch of different exercises that we're going to be working on. Today, in total, we're going to be learning 12 different drum beats. Okay, 12 different drum beats. But first of all, let's talk about what the basic rock beat is and how we learn things from top to bottom, how we get things all to work together. Okay, so that's what we need to work on. Now I'm going to put my headphones on as I talk here, because I forgot to do that as I started recording, but not like you need to know that. Okay, so a rock beat, a basic rock beat, is also known in the music world as an 8-note rock groove. And it's called a rock groove because it's a typical drum beat that we use in lots of rock. One of the basic iconic rock songs that we hear this is AC/DC Back in Black. That's one of the iconic rock songs that uses this basic groove. And so what it looks like is this. Okay, that's what the rock groove sounds like and looks like to play. Now, how I gonna get to that, it's not like I'm just gonna say, go figure it out. There is some steps that how you can kind of memorize this or how you can approach getting all 3 limbs to work. Now, remember, I started talking about starting from the top down. So the first thing at the top is going to be our hi-hat. Now on the screen right now, you'll see this is what the hi-hat pattern is for the basic rock groove. Okay, this is what the hi-hat pattern is. And so you'll see it's all 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, now I'm playing with the tip of my drumstick here to make a different sound. And you could also use the shaft of your stick at the taper to make a little more harsher sound. Okay, and also I want you to notice that my hi-hat is closed. Okay, so I'm taking my left foot and I'm pressing down onto the pedal and I'm keeping it there. If I start playing the rock beat with an open hi-hat, it's going to sound quite a bit different. Okay, it's a bit loud and it's a bit messy, but it's a bit more loose and relaxed rather than nice and tight and focused, okay? So I want you trying to use the tip of your stick here and trying to hit the top of, just the top of the hi-hat here, okay? I want you to kind of aim for this spot here. Don't have to go too close, but here. So playing in 8 notes, okay? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, now we're not playing to a metronome. I'm just demonstrating this for this purpose. But when we would ideally put a metronome on and play. Now I've got the hi-hat figured out. Now I'm gonna add a layer. I'm gonna add the snare to my hi-hat pattern I've done. So now looking at the sheet music with hi-hat and snare, so you'll notice that the snare notes, the black dots, appear on the 2 and the 4. Okay, so every time I count a 2 or 4, I'm going to be hitting the snare drum. And I'm gonna have my right hand crossing over top of my left hand. All right, so this is called a cross grip, and this is an open hand grip. Okay, so open hand playing. So I'm going to use the right hand over top, and my left hand, who's going to hit the snare, is going to be in the center. Now remember, my left hand is going to aim in the center of the drum. All right, and I'm hitting in a north-south direction. I'm not hitting sideways, or I'm not missing here. Okay, I'm using a whipping motion. Okay, not a hand motion. Okay, whipping motion, letting the bounce go. Okay, so I start with the hi-hat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and now I'm gonna add the snare drum on 2 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you see, it's starting to slowly sound like a beat there, all right? Now, that is what would combine there. So now I've got the hi-hat, and now I've got the snare combined, and now I will add the last layer of the bass drum. And looking at the full rock beat groove here, here's the sheet music for the whole basic rock beat. Now I have hi-hat, snare drum, and bass drum. Okay, the bottom note is the bass drum. So you'll notice that the snare doesn't move, that the bass drum is now on the 1 and the 3. Okay, so bass drum on 1 and 3, and then the hi-hat on every single one. Okay, every single one. We're counting in 8 notes, right? So let's start the hi-hat pattern again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Now we're going to just add the bass drum on 1 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1. All right, so that's how you kind of layer it together. So for all of these exercises today, that's the process of how you figure them out. If you're struggling to kind of get them, kind of figure out and get your coordination right, start with the hi-hat, and then at the snare, and then at the bass drum. All right, always in that process. All right, so figure out your hands first, and then we'll add the feet last. That's how we'll process that. All right, now, that's what we call a basic rock beat. So what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna teach you 12 different beats that will make variations of our rock beat. So all 12 beats are not the rock beat. They might sound a little bit rocky to you, but the rock beat is its own separate thing. So we're gonna take the basic rock beat, and we're going to change a few things about the rock beat. Maybe we'll change some things with the hi-hat first, then we'll change some things with the snare second, and then we'll change some things with the bass drum last. And you're going to feel and you're going to hear different drum beats that come across it. So I've made 12 different beats off of the basic rock beat that we played. All right, the basic rock beat being. Okay, that's the basic rock beat. So we're gonna move some variations here. Now follow along in your worksheet. Now here's where exercises start to work. Now we have, again, on your page here, if you look on your worksheet, we have all of our bass drum variations here, or we have some snare drum variations and some hi-hat variations, and you'll notice them, they're organized by beat, okay? So we're gonna start with beat 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Notice the BPMs at the start. Okay, we're going to be playing with a metronome, so have your metronome ready to go. And I would suggest, again, we start at the slower speed and we work our way towards the higher speed one at a time. Remember not to jump ahead and to work at higher speeds. Now, for today's exercises, I'm going to be demonstrating 2 different speeds for you. I'm going to demonstrate 60 beats per minute and then 120 beats per minute, double as fast. Again, you don't make that big jump, you work slowly towards it. So after 60, the next level will be 65. After that level will be 70. You'll know that you're ready for the next level when you are able to play the drum beat comfortably without any tension and without many mistakes, and that you're playing solidly, okay? You're executing the drum beat without speeding up or slowing down. All right, you really want to have a good sense of internal timing. So I highly recommend using the metronome is really going to help you, okay? That's really important. Now, let's get started with our first drum beat. Now, our first 3 drum beats are changing the bass drum. That's what we're going to change first. So our hi-hat and snare are going to be the exact same part. So if you remember our rock beat, so the hi-hat and the snare, that pattern I just played, that's going to stay the same the entire time. The hi-hat's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the snare's always going to be in 2 and 4. But instead, what I've done is I'm changing some of the things on the bass drum. So let's look at beat number 1. Now, beat number 1, I have the bass drum on 1, and I have the bass drum on 3, and I have a 3 and. Okay, so it's 1 kick drum, and then 2 kick drums on the 3 and. So let's demonstrate. I'm going to demonstrate to you what that sounds like with 60 beats per minute. Here is beat number 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's do that same drum beat at 120 beats per minute. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good. All right, so significantly faster. So again, start with the slow speeds, work our way towards. So a different kind of sound, a different feel. I like have a little bit of a driving kick. Let's look at beat number 2. Same with the 4, with the hi-hat and the snare. Now our bass drum has moved again. Our beat is now on 1 and then we also have the and of 3. Okay, so the bass drum is going to sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right, so a little bit different. So let's start that super slow at 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's 60 beats per minute. Let's work to 120 beats per minute, just to show you what that sounds like. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so you notice my snare and the hi-hat doesn't change like the regular rock beat, but my kick drum is different, is being different. Let's look at beat number 3. One more variation I've done with the bass drum is now I've done two right at the start, 1 and then the 2 on the and of 2 and the and of 3. So my bass drum pattern is going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, so different, kind of cool. Let's start at 60 beats per minute on beat number 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go to 120 beats per minute on beat number 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so very different feel than our basic rock beat. So those are some variations that we can do with our bass drum. Now let's look at some variations we can do with our snare drum. Okay, look at their snare drum. So beat number 4, 5, 6 are all going to be the same with our kick and our hi-hat. Our hi-hat's going to be doing, and our kick drum is going to be doing on a 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, every time on the 1 and the 3. But our snare is going to be different. Okay, we're going to change what the snare does, and it's going to make different sounds. All right, so let's look at beat number 4. So the difference on the beat number 4 is that we have a snare drum on the 2 and the and of 4. So we have 2 snare hits in a row. Okay, so it's going to be. That's going to be the pattern that our snare drum's going to go. Let's work at 60 beats per minute on beat number 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that's what it looks like really quickly. Let's look at 120 beats per minute on beat number 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very good job. All right, let's move on to beat number 5. Beat number 5. Now, same idea. Kick is going to be on 1 and 3, and the hi-hat's going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and blah, blah, blah. But now our our snare is now moved to the and of 1 and on the 2, and then the and of 3 and on the 4. So it's going to be a little tricky. Boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, ba, boom, ba, ba. All right, that's going to be the kind of the feeling as we get a little faster. So let's play this super slow at 60 beats per minute to figure it out. This is beat number 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's play that at 120 beats per minute. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, quite a bit of a faster groove, and you can see the snare really changes the feel of it when you change it. Let's look at beat number 6. So now I have the snare drum on the and of 1, the and of 2, the and of 3, and the and of 4. So it's on the ands of everything. All right, so it's on the and of everything. It's kind of on the off beat. Sounds a bit off. Let's work at 60 beats per minute on this beat. Beat number 6. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's speed that up for 120 beats per minute. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it kind of sounds like a bit more peppy, that song, as I start to do that. Now, if you haven't figured that out on that last beat, basically the hi-hat and the snare were just alternating. It's kind of alternating, just going back and forth with that. And I just added the kick kind of in the middle there. So remember, figure things out top down. So that's our variations for the snare. Let's move on to the variations for our hi-hat. How do we play the hi-hat differently when we're playing the kick drum as solid as 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, how do we play the hi-hat differently to make different feels? So let's look at exercise number 7, beat number 7. Now, beat number 7, you'll notice that it's basically you're hitting every quarter note. The same as same time you hit a kick drum or a snare, you're hitting the hi-hat. So we're slowing the hi-hat down, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how it feels. So let's pick this up at 60 beats per minute. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, pretty easy there. So let's speed it up to 120 and hear what it sounds like. One, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, a bit more powerful rock sound there when I slow the hi-hat down. All right, so that's beat number 7. Let's look at beat number 8. Now with the hi-hat, instead of going on every single one, I'm going the and of every something. So I'm going on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. So this is going to actually make a bit more of like a disco poppy kind of beat. This is called going on the off beat. So let's give this a try. This is at 60 beats per minute on beat number 8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Pretty slow disco beat. Let's speed it up a little bit. Let's bring it to song tempo, 120 beats per minute. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, there's that disco pop beat that I was talking about. So kind of a cool little ditty there. Let's move on to beat number 9. And now instead of slowing down the hi-hat, we're going to speed it up. Now we're going to go to 16th notes. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Now, when we're playing the hi-hat and it's going too fast, it's pretty hard sometimes to do, unless you're really good with your finger control, to go one-handed on. So it might be easier at slower tempos, but when you go really, really fast, it's really hard to kind of get your hand to go fast. So what you could do, as an option for you, if you decide to, and go with what feels more comfortable, is you can use 2 hands, like you're using a snare drum. Okay? And then whenever the beat comes, use your left hand like you would. Okay, it kind of scoops underneath the hand here. All right, so you have some options. You could use one-handed, which is a little bit harder, or you can use that. All right, so you choose whatever you feel is better for you. Some situations call for different times, and it really depends on the music. So let's look at this one here. Let's going to keep it simple. Beat number 9, 60 beats per minute. I'm going to use the 2-handed approach for this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that's what it's going to sound like. Notice your hi-hat doesn't really bounce as much as your snare drum does when you play that or your practice pad. So when you're practicing your rudiments, you can practice on different toms or even cymbals, and especially your hi-hat if you plan on using that kind of style of play most often. Let's speed it up now to song tempo at 120 beats per minute. This is going to be fast, so get ready for it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. I really love that groove. I did something a little bit different on that beat. Did you catch it? Instead of playing the snare drum with my left hand, I actually played it with my right hand. And I did it differently than the first time. And there's a reason for that. If you ever notice, if you decide to use the 2-handed flutter or play singles on the hi-hat, it does matter what hand you start with. So if you start with your right hand, for example, you are going to be hitting the snare drum with your right hand as well. Okay, so if, for example, follow along, count along with me, because there's 4 hits. And then the snare drum comes the next beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. If I hit with the left hand, then the snare drum is going to be the left hand as well. Okay. So if I start with the left hand on the hi-hat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it does matter what hand I start with. So if I want to hit the snare drum with my right hand, I start with the right hand on the hi-hat. If I want to hit the snare drum with my left hand, I have to start with the left hand on the hi-hat. So just even noticing the patterns and which hand goes first does make a difference. All right, let's look at now our last 3 drum beats are challenges. Okay, now the last 3 challenges are now we're going to combine different variations all together. So we're going to vary all the bass drum, the snare, and the hi-hat together. So let's look at beat number 10. They are meant to be a bit challenging and different. So try them, study them, make sure you understand where they go where. So remember, start the top down, figure out the hi-hat, then figure out the snare with the hi-hat, and then figure out the bass drum with the before 2 grip. So let's look at beat number 10. Now, first of all, let's look at the hi-hat. Look at the top down. Hi-hat is going 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we can handle that. The snare drum is going on 2 and 4. Okay, this is where the snare drum is. So let's do the hi-hat with it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, pretty easy. Sounds like the rock beat that we learned at the start. And now our bass drum is going to be a little bit different now. Now we have bass drum on 1 and another and of 2, and then the 3 and then an and of 4. So it looks like if you actually think about it, they're kind of groups of 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right, so we're going to combine all those things together. Let's do it super slow at 60 beats per minute, and then we'll speed it up, of course, to 120. Here's 60 beats per minute on exercise beat number 10. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, pretty challenging at slow speeds. It's probably going to be a little easier at the faster speeds, to be honest. So let's give it a try. 120 beats per minute. Let's hear what beat number 10 sounds like at song speed. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it sounds a lot cooler at faster speeds. Doesn't really have its full effect at slower speeds. So some beats match faster tempos, and some beats don't match slower tempos. So it's kind of an interesting thing to note. Let's look at beat number 11. Now, beat number 11. Let's start at the top with our hi-hat. Looks like our hi-hat goes with every and, so it's an 8-note pattern. All right. Our snare drum goes on the 2 and then the and of 4, okay? So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... All right, interesting pattern. And then we add the kick drum to the end, and the kick drum is going to be on the 1 and then the 3 and the 4. Okay, so interesting pattern. Dum dum ba, boom 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 ba, boom boom ba, boom 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 ba, boom boom ba, boom 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 ba. Interesting pattern. Let's work at 60 beats per minute. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's speed it up. 120 beats per minute. This is beat number 11. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. I like that beat so much, I kept playing it for a little longer. So pretty cool at faster speeds. Now let's look at our last one. And our last beat, number 12, if you look at the sheet music, it looks a little complicated. So let's have a quick look. Let's look at, first of all, our hi-hat pattern. Our hi-hats land on the one and the ands of all of them. So our basic pattern of 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, let's look at the snare now. The snare lands on the and of 1, the and of 2, the and of 3, and the and of 4. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. All right. So kind of a cool little sassy beat there. And then we have our bass drum to add to that as well. So let's look closely at the bass drum. Our bass drum lands on the 1, the 2, the 3, and then there's an A of 3 and the E of 4. So a little tricky. Now, the last beat, you see I wrote the counting in there, 3 e and a, 4 e and a, to help us kind of figure out where they go. So I combined some 16th notes in there. So it's going to sound like boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. All right? So kind of like a cool funky beat. So let's do it nice and slow at 60 beats per minute to hear what it sounds like. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So even a pretty cool beat when it's slow. Now let's speed it up, and it's going to be sounding really fast at 120 beats per minute. So this will be kind of like a almost punky. So we'll see what it sounds like. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so that's kind of like a cool punk beat that's almost being played there when you play it faster. So notice even the difference in speed can really make a big difference. All right, so there's 12 different drum beats that you can try and you can add to your collection, and you can add to your collection of whatever you need. I challenge you now to spend some time seeing what other variations you can come up with and what other cool beats can you come up with. Try it and challenge it. Feel free to send me some of these cool beats. I love to hear getting new things and adding new grooves to my library. Try and challenge it and try and just keep it to just kick drum, snare, and hi-hat. What kind of cool and creative beats can you come up with? And you be a solid drummer. So work at trying to be solid, not fast here. Try and be a solid drummer and try your best. Now our next part, our next lesson is going to be all about drum fills, which is great, transitions. And these are something that's a lot of you are very excited about. So we're going to teach you some basic ones. So I'll catch you in the next lesson.